Afternoon, good evening, colleagues from wherever you are. I want to thank Professor Motley and her team for giving us the opportunity to present at this workshop. It gives me an immense pleasure to also represent um, colleagues of mine that are responsible for the research hub that is twin to the Redesa LC to make this brief presentation to the team. So I'll just quickly share my screen. I have a few slides to speak from. And to put that here. Let's see if we can put it presentation mode. So thanks again for the invitation. I will speak on behalf of what I call the Big Five. So it's up to you to identify which is the elephant, the lion, the African buffalo, the rhino, and the leopard, right? Those are the big five that we know in the continent. But anyway, thank you so much for the invitation. And on behalf of my colleagues, my other PIs, it's a pleasure to present our research hub, which is focused on the role of data streams in informing infection dynamics in Africa. My name is Alash'le Abimiku. I'm Professor of Medicine and Executive Director of Research at the Institute of Human Virology, Nigeria. My other colleagues are listed over here, and PIs for the different projects that I will present, and our two cores, which is the administrative core and the data management and analysis core, and also which our NGS, next generation sequencing. So the main goal of our research hub is to develop population scale data streams and to use that as a cornerstone for future pandemic preparedness. So what we've done is establish 4 specific aims, and we have used the COVID pandemic, and as I mentioned, 3 research projects, and with 2 core to understand the multi-layer interactions that explains the dynamics and impact of COVID as an example of an outbreak. The second aim would develop geospatial tools that we hope will help country leadership and governments to better prepare for the next outbreak or pandemic. So partnership here with the leadership and government in the countries that we work in, it's really important. And then we hope to join the rest of the family of the DSI Africa to collaborate and take advantage of pilot projects that would expand some of the work that we're doing. And through all of these things, and this is where our partnership with Redesa LC is absolutely critical. We hope to continue to engage policymakers, governments, fellow researchers, such that we're able to access data and redistribute any of the product and information that is coming from our work in Inform Africa. So the partnership that we have is on several layers. First and foremost, we're focusing on 2 key countries. We're focusing on Nigeria and South Africa for all of our data streams that are coming from COVID and HIV. And I'll explain more on those when I go through some of our projects, all of our projects. And this really represents the multi-interactions that need to occur for this research hub. Very important, as I mentioned, are the government of those two countries, Nigeria and South Africa, probably the biggest countries in Africa with HIV infections. Probably 40% of the infections in Africa reside in those two countries. So really key. And as COVID has shown us, those two countries, certainly South Africa has been critical in terms of the spread and even what we know about COVID within the continent. So very importantly, these different communities, the government, the researchers, our industry partners, and a number of the high-level agencies within both countries. You would see that in our interaction, we expect, we have 3 projects, as I mentioned, that is supported by an administrative and a DMAC and NGS core. We expect very close interaction among those projects and cores, but also an additional interaction with the DSI Africa Consortium. And while we're doing that in terms of our community advisory board, we expect that the LC Radisa that we are trained with would help in terms of the activities that we're doing in engaging these various stakeholders in implementing our research hub. So as I mentioned, we've got 3 main projects. The first project is one that looks at the interaction between geospatial location, so of any infectious agent, and in this case, we're looking at, we're using COVID as an example, which will be outlined by the GPS location. We're looking at communication patterns, and then layer on top of that is the viral genetic spread and social networks. So in both Nigeria and in South Africa, we are looking at national databases that have information in terms of the SARS-CoV-2 seroprevalence, information on any survey database, and also testing results that's coming from the national reference testing laboratories. And very key to all of what we're doing is looking at the viral genomic sequences and to see how these various subtypes or mutants spread along with location of various individuals and social networks as well. Our second project looks at, is similar to our project 1, but in this case, we're looking at different layers of interactions. And this is interactions that has to do with mobility of different humans and their interactions. And along with that, the mobility of infectious agents as well. So again, the household surveys play a role here, population data, but also very importantly, mobile device data that kind of gives information in terms of various population activities, the duration of those activities, the interactions, the destinations, and how these destinations are reached. And this is really just going to use modeling and analytics to be able to understand the dynamism of disease transmission that is carried through this transportation and movement of human population. Our third project looks at COVID-19 spread in both countries. But in this case, we look at also the effect of HIV to try and understand what an existing pandemic does to one that has been introduced. So HIV has been with us in both countries for quite a while. With the entrance of SARS-CoV-2, how these two infectious agents interact. And so one of the things that we'll be looking at is how a HIV, pre-existing HIV infection, in this case we're using HIV infection, but it could be any infection at all, impacts a new pandemic or a new outbreak. So in this case, existing HIV infection, how does it impact COVID-19 clinical outcomes? There's a lot that has been published in this area already. But we will be having a deep dive and understanding the different waves that have happened within the continent and how this has impacted HIV and the other way around. Is our specific aim too, where we would see how now a new outbreak being introduced displays or interacts or synergizes with an existing infection to affect clinical outcomes. And very importantly, what we would like to see again is the overlap in epidemiology and spatial interaction between those two infections. And hopefully with using existing biorepositories and data in both countries, we will begin to understand what are the immunity or the host genetic variations within the continent that might offer some insight into the somewhat favorable outcome of COVID infection within the continent. So this really summarizes our 3 projects, but of course we do have all supported by the Administrative Corps and the DMAP Corps. And we do have our industry partner, and in this case, it's going to be ACRS. And ACRS' goal is to describe the transmission dynamics of COVID-19 through spatial intelligence. And this is, in fact, where we hope that at the end of this, there will be a product that would be made available that builds on geographic information and provide a tool that can be used in various countries that would activate and operationalize spatial models and give the various governments a tool for intelligence, as it reveals such maps that shows some of the interactions that we have talked about already. So in brief, this really summarizes what the research hub is about. We hope that as we implement the various research work and engage the different stakeholders, we will have a very interactive session with our LC, so that the engagement of the various stakeholders and then the ability to also share some of our findings or product that's coming from this research is done in a very productive and culturally sensitive manner. And that at the end of the project, we have some findings that would be useful for policymakers in both countries to be able to prepare better for the next outbreak or pandemic. So we're maybe about 6 months into implementing this grant. We have interacted with the Radisa LC already, but we look forward to collaborating even more closely to ensure that the engagement of the various stakeholders benefit from the expertise within the Research Hub and the Redisa LC. So thanks for the opportunity to share briefly with you. And I wish you a successful meeting, and I look forward to the outcome of it and our interacting very closely. So thanks again for your time, and thanks for listening.